Hello and welcome. Welcome to everyone that's tuning in on this. And today we have Georgia, who's in the yoga and wellness space, who recently has become a yoga teacher. Georgia, can you tell us a bit about yourself and where you are in your journey and how you've come to be a yoga teacher?
Hi Ruth, and hi everyone listening or watching. Uh, so I've always worked in the corporate world from when I left school, and I've taken an interest in yoga just in the last probably year and a half after suffering a lot of aches and pains and headaches just from sitting at a desk and being hunched over all day, just not connecting my mind and my body, always on the go. And then I discovered yoga, and the first time that I did yoga was almost very confronting to me as soon as I got on the mat, thinking, I'm stuck in this class for an hour. I was watching the clock, every minute felt so long, and it was just so hard to find that stillness and to slow down. And, I was thinking, I've got so much to do once I leave here. Um, and I struggled through it. And then one day something just clicked, and it was like I really loved yoga, and all of a sudden it made sense to me. Um, and I just started practicing a few times a week. And people kind of said to me, the best way to learn something is to teach it to other people. So I thought I've got nothing to lose. There's a really good yoga community here in Brisbane. So I reached out to Raw Power Yoga in Albion. There's a teacher there called Simon Curl that's been doing yoga a long time. He used to be into basketball, and then suffered his own injuries and got into yoga. So we had a few conversations, and he was so aligned and just really kind and caring and supportive. So I went through my 250-hour training and just found that I really loved it. Um, when I first started, I was into the more science and anatomy side of things, and while I still love that, I'm really finding my passion now in nervous system control and just slowing down, connecting the mind to the body, and just taking care of yourself. So it's kind of the journey that I'm on at the moment. I've now qualified and I've started teaching, so the journey's just beginning.
I love that. So when you talked about before, about when you first started yoga, it was almost like a rushing, couldn't really sit still, and then you started falling in love with it. What do you think shifted for you to come to realize that you actually loved yoga?
I think it was a mindset thing. To be completely honest, I hit my 30th birthday, and that was kind of like oh my gosh, I need to actually look after myself. And, you have that, what do I want my next decade of my life to look like? How do I want to treat myself? How do I want to treat the other people around me? What opportunities do I want? And a lot of it came down to the monkey mind and slowing it down and actually being able to be present, not just, you go to meet with a friend and then you're thinking, once I've finished here, I've got to go and do this or that, and you're not really present. So I think there was just a epiphany moment almost on that mat where it was like the best way to live is to just be present. And it doesn't really matter what situation you're in, where you are, as long as you're present, it can really help things.
So wonderful to share. And I definitely agree. I think the present moment is the most powerful moment to be in because us naturally humans, we either tend to get stuck with the present or not, sorry, not the present. We get stuck in the past or the future. But the past is something that's already happened. We can't change it. But you can take all the learnings that come out of that or things that you might have, learned or made you uncomfortable. It's understanding what made you uncomfortable so then you can make those changes and shift in the current present moment. But then you've got the other side of the spectrum where people kind of get stuck in the future where they're thinking so far in advance and then feeling like they're so crippled because there's so much to be done or how do I get there? And then they kind of freeze, but it
Hmm.
hasn't even happened yet. And
Yeah,
the moment now is what we can do to shift the future. So I personally believe that the destination isn't always a thing that you need to focus completely on. I think the journey is more important because the destination can always change.
yeah, exactly. Especially with everything going on with your life and what you want it to be.
100%. So what are some of the experiences outside of yoga that shaped your perspective on life?
Uh, I would say I had a job change earlier this year, and that really helped. I've enjoyed my previous roles, but I just it wasn't the right environment for me, not quite the right fit. So then finding the right corporate role that I do Monday to Friday with other people that are aligned and motivated and outgoing, that's something that's definitely really helped. Um, Also a really supportive partner. He's got a 7-year-old son, and every time I look at him, it's just what can I do that's going to help him? What can I do that's going to inspire him? And who do we want him to be when he grows up? And a lot of that comes back to presence and just finding those values, being a kind person, trying to help others. That's definitely shaped a lot. And then just the general day to day things that pop up and how you handle them. We can all be cool, calm, and collected, and then we get in the car, we're stuck in traffic, and we just completely change. And it's so hard to be calm and come back to that. But it's those challenges that really make you want to be able to help yourself and be calm and find stillness and ways through it to maintain that calm presence.
I love that. And when you said before, working in your previous roles that you didn't really have so much of that, what do you think it was in those moments and times that you could probably pull out from now today that would maybe themes or things that you might have not uncovered for yourself that now you've come to realize?
Uh, I would say probably compared to a lot of other people, maybe you could say a short attention span or high energy. So always needing to do a lot of things and kind of be on the go. And having a variety in my day to day. So previous roles were a lot of processing. So I would be sitting at my desk for the whole day. You might not get to interact with anyone. Um, and that's fine, the day's busy, but it just got to the point where it's like, what am I missing? Why do I get to the end of the day after being busy all day, but I don't feel satisfied and I don't feel accomplished? So the role that I've got now is so much variety, and it's working with different people and working on projects that you can finish and feel really a sense of accomplishment on them. So that's really helped along with teaching yoga as well. It kind of gives me a balance having that corporate role and then working with people in the yoga space where it's a lot more vulnerable and you see that soft side of people
Mm.
as well.
That's so important and really interesting, isn't it? Because I think us humans, we love to connect with each other. Even if you're the most introverted person out there, you still need that human interaction so we can actually feel like we're living and we're breathing the kind of same space. And sometimes we go through different issues in life, but they're the same thing, but they're packaged up and they come in different shapes and forms. But we can really relate to that. And I love how you mentioned, being in the yoga space, that people can share that vulnerability. Because outside those four walls, no matter what job that you've got out there, how much pay that you're bringing in home, it doesn't matter where you live. You strip that all away, we go through very similar things. And the fact that we can connect on that level using our mind and body through movement and breath work is it's just beautiful. And I love that I just can't wait to see you blossom as well as a yoga teacher because you're going to have so much impact out there in the community and be able to bring people together. And maybe you might be able to touch someone similar to you where you're laying on that mat going, "Are we done yet? Can I go? This is too slow for me, I need to go, go, go." But I think
Hmm.
sometimes, it's great to kind of slow ourselves down because we need to stop and smell those roses. Even if they don't smell the greatest, it will be something
Hmm.
that you treasure in that moment. You won't be able to get that time back because when the future comes, the
Exactly.
past becomes the past. It's not the present
Yeah.
moment anymore.
That's it. And it's so important to be able to sit in those uncomfortable feelings and understand that hard times are always part of life and it's how you deal with them. Sit in that feeling, acknowledge them, but don't dwell in it. Don't sit in that victim mentality, but know how to move through it and carry on. And that's something that does come back to presence again. You can't ignore it. You can't keep yourself busy and just, distract, distract, distract. You have to acknowledge it and then you have to work through it.
We do, and 100% agree. I can really resonate with that because I was similar as well in a way where I was always very naturally future orientated. So it was almost like, okay, I have a goal and I have this other goal. And it's like once you get to that goal, what's next? Okay, that's next. But then I also felt this feeling inside of me where I felt like I was ticking all these boxes and doing the so-called right things that everyone else was doing, but I kind of felt empty. I felt like something
Hmm.
wasn't right, and I never stopped to really acknowledge that. I kind of pushed through it and thought things will fall into place, you know? Sometimes you just need to do it and everything will happen for a reason. But I
Hmm.
never stopped to actually understand myself. And when I started doing that and I shifted my mindset with approaching it in terms of just acknowledging it, I think acknowledging it is so powerful because what we can naturally do sometimes as humans is kind of almost like you've got a million tabs open, you'll be like, okay, I'm just going to work on these 5 tabs, and you forget everything else in the background. And then maybe a tab comes up and it flashes at you, and it's like an update or whatever's due. And you kind of acknowledge it and press, okay, put that to the
Hmm.
side, we'll come back to that. But do we really ever actually come back to it? Personally, for
Exactly.
me, I never came back to them. I think, yes, we have other time, we'll come back. And then it starts to compile itself and it compresses. And before you know it, things start to blow. It's almost like we're a balloon. We've got pressure inside of us. But if
Hmm.
you don't let that pressure out slowly and acknowledge that pressure, it's going to pop at some point. And when it pops, the balloon can be put back together, yes, but will it be the same? I don't think so. And you will leave marks on yourself, but those marks can also become your tiger stripes too. There's a bit of a double-edged sword and duality to all of this, but for me
Hmm.
personally, I started sitting and acknowledging those thoughts first. And in time, I got a bit better with them. And after sitting and acknowledging them without having self-judgment, or creating this kind of like talking down on myself. It was like this is a complete safe space. There's no judgment here. We're just accepting the thoughts as they come. And I started to observe them more and started journaling and writing them down too so I could get my feelings, my thoughts out and what it meant to me by asking myself questions such as, is that really what I want? Or is that someone else living rent free in my head and I'm allowing and enabling that to happen? So it made me personally shift. But I have a question
Yes.
for you, Georgia.
Yeah.
When you mentioned that you had to get 250 hours of studying for like to becoming a yoga teacher, and on top of that, you had a full-time job.
Hmm.
During your training, how did you stay motivated when juggling work and study?
I think honestly, the main motivator was just that I didn't have time to stop. I think if I did have time to stop, that's where it would be hard to pick myself up and get back into it. So I had to kind of slot in the days where it was like, okay, I don't want to burn out here. So, because it was every fortnight we'd do 10-hour days, Saturday and Sunday, and that was for 4 months. So on those weekends off, you're catching up with family, you're catching up with friends, you're doing housework, you're just doing life admin. So I had to find time to slot in what I call productive rest. So not just days where, I sat down and watched Netflix all day because I knew that that wasn't going to be productive. I knew that the next day I would feel sluggish and tired. It's not going to motivate me or actually make me rest. Your mind's still going while you're doing all of this. So productive rest could be like just going out for a walk without any music, no podcast, just taking that time for you. And I always felt so much better after that. Or sometimes you don't want to walk, you don't want to exercise when you're resting. So, like you said, journaling is a huge tool that helped me, or just going and getting a coffee and finding those moments of stillness. And it didn't have to be the whole day, but just those pockets of time where it's almost like you're dating yourself. You do something kind
Mm.
and you just have that moment away from yoga, away from work, just everything else is aside. You just have that moment to yourself.
And that's so powerful, isn't it? Because, like what you said just now about dating yourself, I think all of us need to learn how to date ourselves. We spend 365 days with ourselves. There's
Mhm.
never a day where we get to separate ourselves from ourselves. So no one else is going to know you better from the inside to the outside better than anyone else. But what I've
Yes.
personally found myself observing through myself and others that have also vocalized this to me is, throughout my own journey and my own life, is that I think people look externally for validation, whether they acknowledge that or not, but it's almost as if they might be missing something and they try and seek that, but they never find out themselves maybe down the track unless someone's either shown them or they might ask questions to make this person think about and go, hold on, is that something that I haven't accepted myself, or maybe that I'm looking for in a partner, for example, or maybe friends, colleagues, but I can't
Hmm.
give that for myself. And I think that's so interesting. Have
Hmm.
you experienced anything similar in your space and world?
Definitely. Throughout many years, you put that expectation. A big one for me was to expect that people would treat you how you would treat them. That's not going to happen. Everybody's got their own values, their own personalities, and you just kind of have to accept that. But what you don't have to accept is whether you put up with it or not. So, you
Mm.
you can surround yourself with the right people, and that's great, but you still have to be your own source of happiness. Like you said, we're with ourselves 365 days a year. We're going to have times that we're alone. We want to be able to have times alone and enjoy it. So you need to find what lights you up, what makes you happy. If there's some reason that you can't spend time on your own, if it's uncomfortable, you need to think about what that is, what you're scared to think about, what you're scared to process. And unfortunately, you have to dive into that. And not in a sense like we spoke about earlier that you sit in that, but you find ways to process the feelings and then work through it so that you can enjoy your own company.
Hand on heart, I solely agree with that as well.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for sharing, part of your journey with that there. And I have a follow-up question where you talk about, we talked about, finding inner happiness and being happy with yourself and finding your own purpose too. What is your purpose in life and what motivates you?
So I have been asked that a lot of times, and I know so many people have this big grand answer for that and such a purpose. And mine is going to sound very small in comparison to a lot, but my purpose would be that every interaction I have the other person leaves that feeling better off than they did before the interaction. And just to be able to add that value, add that spark, you don't know what other people are going through. They might be the happiest people on the outside, but we don't know what's going on in their world. So just being able to be that kind person and help others experience a good life.
And that is not small in any way to compare to anyone else, Georgia, because your journey yourself cannot be compared to someone else's. But I 100% agree with that, where, we are all individuals. Everyone has a story to them, but you don't see that on surface level. It's not until you start talking to them and connecting with them. And I think it's so interesting because sometimes on face value, we naturally judge people, right? But
Mhm.
sometimes those could be projections of our own, but also maybe off past experiences and patterns that we've picked up on. So we naturally put people into boxes. But the ironic thing is that some of us also hate being put into boxes, but we put others in boxes, right?
Yes.
But, I love that you want to empower all these other people. You want to leave a bit of a mark through someone else, whether you've met them through work or through yoga or through the wellness kind of space, but sharing some sort of knowledge or experience with them so it leaves them being uplifted after they've been able to connect with you. I think that's truly beautiful because I think in life there's not one true right purpose. I think everyone's got their own reasons and their own purposes in life and what they want to deliver. But I think that's awesome that you can collaborate with other people.
Yeah, for sure. And what you just said is a big thing, when you do see somebody and you go into that mode of judging them or you have a criticism on them, often it is an insecurity in ourselves. If for example you see somebody and you think, you know, they have really nice hair, often people will instead think to criticize that and say like, oh, it's not that great because this reason or that reason, maybe it looks a bit funny or you look for the bad in it. And then when you sit and think about it, maybe it's because you're not happy with your own hair. And that's just a
Mm,
very silly example. It would go much deeper than that. But often what you do criticize in others is due to that insecurity within yourself.
we're truly interesting, us human beings, aren't we?
Yes, very complex.
But I love it. It would be such an interesting world out there. Well, actually, it wouldn't be, I think personally, if that we were all exactly the same people, cookie cutted, where we thought exactly the same, where we acted exactly the same, we process information the same. I think that's the beauty of life is that you can always learn something through someone else, whether you get
Mhm.
along with them or you might not be best friends, but I think there's always learnings that come out of it, whether it's something that the other person can just learn, but also I definitely think it's something that you personally can take away from every experience and every path that
Definitely.
you cross with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to your training, was there ever a point in training where you felt like giving up?
Yes. Yes, there was one day in particular. Um, I think it was about maybe midway through the training, so about 2 months in. Um, and what happened was we have quite a few different teachers that come in. So we've got Simon that runs the course mainly, does the curriculum, that kind of thing. We had an instructor that taught us anatomy. We had somebody that taught us about the vagus nerve. And then we had another lady that just kind of taught general yoga. Her whole thing was her vibe. And she was at the time what I thought was woo-woo. And we all had to sit in a circle, we had to close our eyes, and we had to go each at a time and just make a funny noise, like just any noise you could, and then we all had to laugh at that person, just to play with our tones and just be silly and get into that childlike state. Um, and even just talking about it, it sounds hilarious. But at the time, I think I was just so stressed and I'd put so much pressure on myself that sitting down and just making noises and laughing, it just made me really think, why am I here? Why am I doing these woo-woo things? And I just kind of you know, hit that point where I was so close to getting up and just walking out midway through the day and felt like giving up. I was thinking about my friends and family and what are they doing on their Saturday? It's such a nice day outside. But honestly, like 2 hours later, I was fine. I just needed a bit of a break. It was just that stress mentality, and then I got past it. But there were definitely some challenging times trying to get the homework done, trying to attend classes, trying to teach. So it was very challenging, but I learned a lot about myself in those moments.
That's so interesting. All it took
Mm.
was, 2 hours just to go away and kind of hit the reset button. Was there anything at that point that you did to help yourself become grounded?
Yeah, yeah, there was. So I was very close to getting in the car and driving home, but every day in our lunch break we would all go to the cafe next door and have lunch, and we were all very vulnerable, so we could talk about anything that we wanted to. And it was just that connection with everybody else that was going through the same thing and opening up. And I'm not normally somebody that would share things going on in my mind. I normally really withhold that. But with this group, I was able to say anything. There was no judgment. So just sharing that with them and everybody giving me their support, it's really nice to have that community around you. So that really helped me get through.
Oh, that sounds so beautiful. And I think it's so amazing to know that, when you're going through something, there are definitely people out there, whether they're in the exact same similar situation or they could be in a whole different continent or country going through the exact same thing. But when you're forced to be put into the same kind of area and space, so you go in there and learning to be, a yoga teacher and everyone going through the exact same journey, but their journey is slightly different and altered to yours. But initially, at the end of the day, you all want to get certified to become a yoga teacher. And the way
Mhm.
that everything is structured is so interesting, and everyone opening up and being vulnerable in that. Did you, in that moment where someone was vulnerable, do you know who it was that started to be vulnerable that kind of opened up the can of worms for everyone to feel like they were in a safe space to be able to share their thoughts and feelings?
So on our very first weekend ever doing the training, the second day we all arrived. So every morning we arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, and we all had to sit down and just say what's happened in our world. And, if it was a Sunday, so we'd been there the day before, just how did we feel overnight? How did we sleep? What have we thought about? And on that
Mm,
second day, so on the first Sunday, one of the ladies walked in and she just burst into tears straight away. So straight off the bat, second day um, there was somebody crying, and it was just everyone got up, gave her a box of tissues, everyone gave her a hug, and was just there. And these were people we'd only known each other for 24 hours. So it was
mm,
just that safe space. And I think Simon, that I mentioned, that owned the studio and facilitated all of this, he just really cultivates that environment, and he makes sure that everyone that comes in is there for the right reasons and that they're aligned with his values. So it was
mm.
just unreal. I've never had a group like that before. It's really like life changing.
It sounds like such a lovely experience, and the fact that, someone's broken down and everyone's barely known each other for 24 hours, but everyone's come together as a community just like that to make sure that
Hmm.
this person's okay. It just goes to show how important, creating the right environment it is to get that support, which is non-judgmental. We all just want to be able to feel accepted so we're not putting on a mask.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's the hardest thing to do is to open up. And like I must say, it's still something that I struggle with a lot. Like I would never cry in front of them. That's just something that I still need to keep working on. Not saying that I want to go and cry in front of groups of people, but that's still a part that I'm tapping into and chipping away at, is just showing that kind of emotion. And
Mm,
for the people that can do that, I just find it's so much strength. It's not an easy thing to be that vulnerable.
yeah, but it will come in time, the fact that and you've acknowledged it and you're working
Hmm.
on that, I think is so powerful in itself, because you're taking that
Exactly.
step forward for you, no one else.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So we talked a bit before about breath work, and
Hmm.
I'm hearing a bit that it's a big part of your work. How has it impacted your mindset in your day-to-day life?
Very massively, I can easily say. So every morning that I get up now, I spend even just 2 minutes, if that's all that I have, just focusing on breath. So I don't look at my phone for the first hour of the day at least, but in that first 10 minutes that I wake up, I make sure that I do at least 2 minutes of breathing. And even if it's just sitting there, one hand on your belly, one on your heart, and just breathing in and out through your nose only, trying to only have your stomach moving. So not breathing from your chest, but breathing through the stomach and through
Mm,
the nose. That really engages the vagus nerve, which puts you into that parasympathetic state of rest and digest. And it's just huge change. And then through the day, I've got one timer every single day to just take 3 breaths, even if I'm at my desk, 3 deep breaths, just light and long. And it really shifts that state of mind.
wow. That sounds
Mm.
life-changing, and I think a lot of us could definitely take a page from your book out there and, put it into ours because it's so important. How did you come to learn about breath work? And, and what kind of techniques are there out there that people could look into?
So there's definitely a lot. This was part of our curriculum with the training as well. So every day we had our morning where we'd have to do a meditation and some breath work. And when we came back from lunch, same thing. And we had to read a book called Oxygen Advantage by Patrick, I can't remember his surname. But we had to read that as part of curriculum, which was all about nasal breathing, which helps build that carbon dioxide tolerance, which releases oxygen from the bloodstreams to the muscles and tissues to help with like repair, and it's just really good with all kinds of recovery. So that was a huge part of it, and there was breathing exercises within that. But to keep it very simple, as long as you're breathing in and out through your nose and you're trying to extend the exhales to be longer than the inhales, that's what's going to put you into that rest and digest. So a lot of people do play with mouth breathing, and I think it can be really beneficial, but I haven't studied that far. We've really only had that focus on nasal breathing, and there's so many benefits to it that that's just what I've stuck to since then.
Awesome, nasal breathing, hey? So that's where it's all at, and that's super interesting to hear that, it's all about more about the inhale versus the exhale.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And just making sure that you do extend that exhale. So, as simple as breathing in for 4 and out for 6. And you just
Mm.
try to breathe so lightly. This was in the book that you can't even feel your nostril hairs moving. So, you can imagine just so, so softly. It's not about deep breaths, like, but rather just lightly and then a long exhale. And whatever
Sorry, did I
kind of
get that the wrong way round? Or was it the longer
exhale,
inhale, longer exhale, sorry.
longer exhale. Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
exactly.
sorry. I'd misheard there. I thought that it was the longer inhale, and I thought, that's interesting.
Longer
But that is
exhale.
that is my fault for not being able to listen to that properly.
The inhale will be good for you if you're trying to energize yourself, maybe if you're trying to pump yourself up or something. But to try and put yourself into that calm, rest and digest parasympathetic mode, then extending
Mm.
that exhale will really help you.
Ah, so there's a bit of duality there. So that's super interesting. So if you wanted to energize yourself, which is the opposite of calming yourself down, you would hold in more on the inhale. But if you want to really calm yourself down, your nervous system, the exhale is where it's at.
Exactly. Yeah. So
Oh.
I haven't done any breathing exercises with a longer inhale. But there's definitely some research on that, and I think I spoke to you that I'd really like to do a lot more research and study on the nervous system and the vagus nerve in particular, and I think that will kind of come hand in hand. So it really interests me, and I'd love to find out more.
So I know that you want to jump into that, but the vagus nerve, is there anything that you can share with us on what that is and what it does?
So the vagus nerve, it goes all the way from your brain all the way down your spine, and it kind of controls all your parasympathetic state, your sympathetic state. So it can have a lot to do with nervous system disorders like anxiety or depression. So building up that tone, which again, nasal breathing can help engage and build that tolerance, really strengthen it. It it can affect everything. So your whole output, the way that you show up, the way that you feel. Definitely so much to learn about it and really interested, but it's a huge part of life and a huge part of how people, have their personalities and how they interact with the world.
Wow. That is cool stuff. I've definitely learnt taking that one into my book as well. I think that's super cool because it's so interesting the way that our bodies work, right? Because we see them on an external perspective, but we don't see all these things that happen internally. And sometimes they just happen naturally. It's almost like getting to the shower and then feeling that water drip down, but your body is also absorbing some of that stuff too, whether it's steam and opening up the pores. We don't feel those pores literally opening up unless we really focus in that present moment. We can then
Mhm.
tap into that, but you don't naturally think, oh, my pores are all being opened right now. Same with when you wash your scalp.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. There's so much going on, and you don't see it, but I feel like as you do get older, you start to get in touch with the feelings, and you really want to help all the internal things that are going on.
Mm, definitely, definitely, because we've only got the one body, right? So it's what you do with it, both internally and externally. But I think the health is so important.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm. So, when we looked at your Instagram profile, you mentioned about nourishing your body and mind. What does that mean
Mhm.
to you personally?
So nourishing your body kind of, it's got such a connection to the mind. So if you're not looking after your mind, your body's not going to be in its best state either. Um, so things like, I've had a bit of pain in my shoulder over the last couple of months, and you could just say that it's strain from doing these physical movements and yoga, or it's not enough strengthening, that kind of thing. But also, what about the tension when I'm at work and my shoulders are up and it causes so much pain? Or what about when I'm just, the way that I'm feeling can really, affect how that is. When I wake up in the morning and I think, is my shoulder going to be sore today? Then that's already sending that message for my body to focus on that part, and it can kind of cause that inflammation. It's your mind's got so much weight over the way that your body is, and it's so important to nourish it and strengthen it and be kind to it so that your body is also healthy. It's able to rest and relax and digest and do all the other things that it's meant to do.
No, that is so important, isn't it? And it's so interesting. And I'm sorry to hear about your shoulder, and I hope that gets better in time, for you because I know that you love your yoga, you love moving and
Mhm.
being active as well. So I can imagine what that's like because I've had my fair share of injuries too. But what I found
Mhm.
personally for me, is it's almost like, when you have the injury and you start to listen to your body instead of pushing through that stuff, you start to
Mhm.
realize, okay, I'm in pain. But over time, I think you bubble wrap yourself sometimes with that mind to go, oh my God, it must be pain. Okay, we must do something a bit about it. But then
Hmm.
there's duality of, is it actually pain, or am I creating this pain in my head, which then translates to my body? But then it's also maybe the fear and also those experiences that have traumatized me that have stopped me from moving that part again. So I think
Hmm.
it's learning to reconnect with that to understand, is it actually me hurting or is it
Hmm.
in my head?
Exactly. Yeah, it goes both ways. You don't want to pull back and, like you said, wrap yourself up and not do things because then you're going to lose that functionality and you're going to lose that strength and mobility. But then you don't want to push yourself too hard because it could inflame, it could aggravate. So
Mm,
it's so important to, while you're doing your movement, your exercises, whatever it is that you're doing, really connect and try to imagine all those internal muscles and joints and how everything's working and really pay attention to it and make sure that you're doing it properly.
mm. For yourself, were there times where you weren't able to pick up on that and understand that it was actually pain and listen to the signals that your body was kind of pushing towards your mind?
Yeah, so when my shoulder did first play up, um, I wasn't doing anything. I was just standing at work and I got this shooting pain all the way down my neck to my right fingertips. Um,
Mm,
and it was something that, I'd kind of had pins and needles on and off for a couple of months before that, and I just ignored it, didn't pay attention. And then even when I got that shooting pain, I'd go to my yoga trainings on the weekend and I'd push through and just think, you've got to do this, you've got to get through it, you've got to learn the poses, you've got to practice and show up for everyone else. And I just put aside that way that I was feeling. And then it was about a month or two later that it just got to the level of pain where I was feeling nauseous. I couldn't do anything. It was really affecting my life. Um, so I've seen a couple of physios since then, but it does all come back to you paying attention to your body and working out what movement am I doing that doesn't help it? What movement am I doing but not doing properly? And I'm maybe sacrificing the joint because I'm putting too much weight in another area that it shouldn't be. And
mm,
even the physio said to me, you can come here and I can help you release the nerves and that kind of thing because it is nerve compression along the top of my spine. But he said, I'm I don't have the same body as you. You're the only one that knows this feeling. You're the only one that can connect. So if you want to do these exercises, then you don't want to stop and lose that strength, but you need to do it and you need to pay attention and you need to make sure that your form's right and just really focus in. So it's just such a big reminder that we're the only ones that do know our bodies and we've got to connect with them. We've got to listen.
and that must have been really hard for you to go through all of that while you're still trying to, get your hours under your belt and also make sure that you can practice all the poses that have to be tested on, right? And on top
Yeah,
of that, it's almost as if you still got your full-time job in the corporate world out of all of it. You're practicing, you're putting all these things in, but all these efforts in, but then your body kind of feels like it's letting you down. Where you're like, this is not the time to let me down, right? But in time,
yeah.
I think it sounds like you started understanding and listening to the signals that it was giving you to go, hey, we need to slow down, but also finding that balance to make sure that we still mobilize that joint so it doesn't become immobilized.
Exactly, exactly. And I went into just doing yoga. I cut out the gym, I cut out a lot of things so that it was just my corporate job in yoga. And I think it got so much flexibility and not the strength from the weights that I was doing beforehand. So I had to learn to pick that back up. And it was a huge lesson for me that you can't just push through, not just in physical challenges, but also emotional ones when these things happen. You have to stop, you have to listen, and you have to respect. If you can't carry on, there's always modifications or there's other things you can do, people that can support you. You don't have to carry that pressure on your own. It's so important to just slow down and pay attention. There's more than
Mm.
one way to get through it.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. There's different ways to go about it, but yep, that is life sometimes almost kicking us back down to remind us and humble us to go, hey, you need to slow down, and we sometimes have to learn in different ways.
Yes, there's always a lesson to it.
Yeah. So, since becoming a yoga teacher, before becoming a yoga teacher, and doing your 250 hours, what was your biggest learning that you took from becoming a yoga teacher, both in the yoga world but also personally, that really shocked you and stood out to you?
Uh, for me, and I think this again is the very start of my journey. Um, when I did find that connection with yoga, it was still a lot of power yoga, so a lot of strength, a lot of cardio, and just the introduction, breathing, and the meditation at the end. So I kind of thought that's the extent of my yoga, that's what I'll be teaching, that's my style. The thing that shocked me is that I then dabbled a little bit with the yin yoga classes. So that's where you'll do a stretch and you'll hold it anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. So it's kind of you relax into that and everything kind of releases. So it's deeper than the muscles. It's also, the fascia and all of that that can release in. And it's still a struggle, like sitting there in an hour class, you might only do 12 poses, if that, if you're holding them for 5 minutes each, and just getting comfortable with sitting there, breathing through it. And I think that's my biggest shock is that there is days now that I crave doing that. I'll light an incense, I'll get my mat out, and I just relax at the end of the day and just let everything else go. And a whole hour of doing nothing, but maybe 12 poses across that. I never thought that I'd be into that. And the more you slow down, you give yourself a chance to find what you didn't realize that you maybe needed. So
Mm.
it's been a huge turning point because that's helped me mentally as well as all those aches and pains that we talked about physically.
Wow, I can just imagine trying to hold myself in a yoga pose for 3 to 5 minutes, but also really slowing it down. How beneficial that would both be for both your mind and your body, right? Because it goes beyond your muscles too, because your muscles also link to your mind. So your mind can tell you to almost give up to do something before you've even started.
Yeah, that's it. And again, it's reconnecting to that breath. And, with every longer exhale, you're telling your body that it's okay. You're telling your body to relax into it. And then you maximize those benefits. So it's
Mm.
just, yeah, it's something I never thought that I'd enjoy, but it's so beneficial for anybody that has the time, can find the time. It really changes your mindset.
I can imagine. But that's definitely something that, again, I think we should look at incorporating into our day-to-day lives. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes we think that we're too busy that we don't have time for it. But rather than jumping from 0 to 100, maybe just putting maybe a minute first aside, maybe once a week, 1 minute
Hmm.
only, just to start doing that and practicing it in time, and then upping your times that you do, maybe from once a week to 3 times a week, and then from
Hmm.
3 times a week to daily, and then from daily 1 minute to 5 minutes, whatever it may be. And I think that would be something that's so rewarding to everyone, both from an internal perspective and external.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the best thing about yoga is you literally don't need anything. You can do it anywhere, just you on your own. So it's super easy to incorporate. And like you said, even 1 minute is going to be beneficial. That's 1 minute of slowing down and just being present and giving back to yourself.
100%. What do you personally think is a misconception of the yoga world, yoga and wellness world?
I think the biggest misconception is when people hear yoga, they're imagining headstands and all sorts of crazy wild poses, different arm balances and twists and all sorts of things. Like you're getting yourself into a little pretzel kind of position. I think that's the biggest misconception because your yoga practice, the physical, is your asana, and you do your asana only to prepare your body for meditation. So you're doing all of these things so that your body can sit comfortably enough to meditate. So everyone's journey is their own. Like, I can't do any kind of headstands with my shoulder. So, that's off the cards for me at the moment. My yoga practice is a lot more gentle from that until I do build that strength again, maybe. But there was so many different things amongst our class through the training that people had injuries, and that's often what leads them to yoga. And it might just look like you're lying down or you're doing nothing, but that is still yoga. There's so many different types, and it's what works for each person. So it doesn't have to be all these crazy poses. Or the other side of the spectrum, it doesn't have to be that you're just lying there doing nothing, like it's your own practice. It's just taking that time to give back to your body and mind.
Mm. And I love that. In terms of not misconceptions now, I guess maybe personal observations that you've had in the classes that you've taught. What have you seen in people in terms of how they've taken yoga on board from a person that's maybe never touched yoga to someone that's really been deep into it and they've been practicing it for years versus maybe someone that's kind of like, they mix up yoga to lifting weights at the gym like yourself.
Hmm.
What has
All the
been some
different
of your
stages.
observations?
So I think the biggest thing that everyone has in common when they come to a yoga class is the curiosity, is seeing what their body's capable of and welcoming in that it's not just physical, it's a lot of emotion as well. And it might bring up things that you haven't thought of for a long time. It could bring up trauma, it could bring up anything. So coming in with a curious mind, that's a huge, the common denominator. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, there's yogis that have been doing it their whole life and they'll come in and they'll go straight into a handstand at the start of the class or something. I haven't
Mm,
personally had that in a class that I've taught, but I've been in classes where people have done that. Um, they're still willing though to respect the rest of the room and let other people have their own journey and they stay on their mat. They're not distracting anyone. Um, Whereas the newbies come in and they kind of more look to everybody else and see what they're doing and they just kind of want to dabble in it. They normally go to the back of the class and they just want to ease into their own practice. Um, and there's been quite a few different people. I've had young people that have come in, and you can see that it challenges them to sit still because, they've probably got busy lives where they've got young families or they've got lots of friends that they've got commitments with and work and everything else that goes on. Um, you can see that they get really uncomfortable and slowing
mm,
down. And then on the other side, there's been a few people in retirement that have come into some of my classes and are dealing with injuries and are trying to find movement that, will help them emotionally and not damage their body. And they're still so trusting and they're so willing to give things a go and just be there and respect everybody else's journey throughout the class. So
mm.
it really enforces that yoga is for everyone and everybody.
No, definitely. I don't think, we're honed in or boxed in because of we're not limited to our ages, our backgrounds, what country we're from, our heights or anything like that, let alone our weight. I think it's beautiful and it's kind of crazy what our body is actually capable of through,
Yeah.
breath, through being present, but also getting into it and just keeping at it. Because in time, your body is so flexible
Hmm.
and I've seen pictures as well of yourself being able to do like the splits. So I think that's
Yeah.
just crazy, what we're capable
Yeah.
of because sometimes people start where they can't even get down lower to a certain degree, which is like less than, I don't know, maybe 45 degrees, and they think this is my maximum, this is all I can do, this is me, but that's you limiting yourself.
Exactly. Yep. And it comes back to that mind and body connection and knowing that, you are capable of things and you just have to do it in a safe way, making sure that your muscles are warmed up, that you're not pushing them too much, and just trusting that it takes time. You're not going to get into these poses from a month of practicing. It can take years, it can take decades. It's just, you know, everybody's different, so it will take time, and you've got to find what works for you and really hone into those feelings and the sensations, take note of it.
No, definitely. Is there anything that comes to your mind that you would like to throw at me? I feel like I've thrown a lot of questions at you.
Uh, I guess for me, and I never got to ask you this earlier, is what put you on the path of where you are now and what you're trying to achieve and where you're trying to go?
So, where I am in my path at the moment as a mindset coach and how I got myself here. Throughout my whole life, ever since I was like the age of 5. It's one of the earliest memories that I really have that's been drilled into my memories is always being really observant and wanting to understand human behaviors and what drives people and why people act the way and that they do or they think that way. And for me, I recently got made redundant in a role that I was working at in a corporate world. And that gave me a bit of an opportunity to really sit back and think to myself, what is it that I really want? What's my purpose in life? Because in all the roles and my whole career, the theme has always been around people focused roles. And I really truly love people because I think, each and everyone out there, we're such individuals, but we're also, there's only one type of us. Like that, we're such special people in a way that we are so individual that we have our own stories. But at the same time, we have those stories, but we don't see that on surface level. But trying to uncover that, we can relate so much on that deeper level. And the mindset is one space that I definitely think that some people don't even know what the mindset is. And the mindset is like a lens that colors your life, whether that's through your beliefs, patterns, and perspectives. But it could be that voice that sits inside of your head sometimes where you hear yourself wanting to do something and you could just hear yourself thinking, no, now's not the right time, I can't do it, or yeah,
Hmm.
maybe down the track. That's actually your beliefs talking to you. And beliefs aren't always facts either. And you can rewrite that. And through my own journey, one of my biggest learnings is that I didn't actually finish high school due to personal reasons. So, personally, I had depression at the time and also an eating disorder. So, for me, it was really hard where I had to drop and ease out of school and I had to go and see a dietitian. I was speaking to a social worker. I had all these people kind of around me trying to support me. But I put myself there where I felt like I was going deeper and deeper and spiraling constantly. But I came to this realization at some point going, I need to help myself. Everyone can help me as much as they can, but they can only do so much. It's almost as if like I have to be willing to accept that help and help myself first. Almost like putting your oxygen mask on you before so you can go out and try and help other people. So I
Hmm.
remember having a conversation with my high school principal at the time, and she was the one that actually really pushed me. Well, she didn't push me, she persuaded me in a way and shifted my mindset by saying, just whatever decision that you make, just remember that there's always different pathways to get to your destination. And it really stood out to me because I sat there thinking, oh my gosh, I felt like the world's pressure was on my shoulders, as if I was going to be a failure or that I was going to have no future if I didn't get a high school certificate so I could go to uni and unlock all these doors that everyone was talking about. But I
Hmm.
chose to take a different path, and that pushed me into all these other different paths. And along the way, I learnt through so much because I started working at such a young age, at the age of like 15, 16, becoming a hairdresser. And I got so much exposure because people that were my age at the time were going straight, they were still in school, and then from school they were going straight into uni. I was getting the work experience at the same time. All these experiences that you might experience later in life, but I was almost speed running it. That's
Hmm.
what it kind of felt like at the time. And I really wanted to understand people more on a deeper level. And when I got made redundant, I thought to myself, hey, is this really what you want? No matter what role that I get into, am I truly going to get full fulfillment for me only? And I thought to myself, from a young age as well, I've always wanted to work for myself, but I never had a full understanding or picture painted for myself to think, what is it that I want to deliver or what do I want to achieve from working for myself? Was it the freedom? Was it the curiosity? Was it me wanting to go out there and create ideas and bring that to life? And I came to realize, hold on, what is it in every single thing that I've done in my life, whether it's through work or outside of work? And for me, it was people. In my spare time, I'd always be reading on different forums like Reddit, for example, watching YouTube videos, and it always had to do with people. And what I observed over the time through my own findings, but also through work and through talking to different types of people, was that it was the mindset. And the mindset really stood out to me, and I could correlate so much of that because it's something that's not tangible. It's not physical, it's not tangible. It's almost like a phone, for example, right? We can hold a
Hmm.
phone and you can put it in your hands and you know it's a phone. So everyone's out there, they're investing in their house, they're investing in their careers, they're investing in their education, maybe their pairs of shoes because you walk on them every single day or their bed. But no one really understands, or not no one, sorry. It's not something that I think people really understand, that it's their mindset that really drives everything. Because sometimes we limit ourselves by thinking back about a past experience and thinking, oh, hold on, but this has happened to me. It's almost like having sashimi for the first time and you love it. And maybe, you have it on a weekly basis and there's one day where you, you might get salmonella or you might get a bad experience where it tasted off and it just put you off. So what happens
Mhm.
is it leaves a bit of a mark there on you where you think, no, I don't want to eat sashimi anymore. But instead of doing that to yourself and robbing yourself of all those future experiences, of having raw fish again, ease yourself back into it. But to
Mhm.
answer your question, why I'm here and what my purpose is, it's to uplift people, to actually share my stories and my learnings. And I'm still learning myself as well. I don't think I'm ever going to stop learning until the last breath that I ever take on this earth. But I'm continuing to learn, to explore, to share experiences with others, and also be able to share that with other people, whether it helps them directly or might give them a bit of a different perspective. That is my purpose in life, and that's what drives me. But also to be able to uplift people that might have been in a similar situation with me, that might have been in school, for instance. It doesn't have to be school. It could also be being made redundant in your role. It's something that's completely out of your control, but accepting that. I think when there's these shortcomings that come in life, instead of dwelling on it, take that as
Mhm.
a learning and you see the opportunities that come out from it. Because I think sometimes one pain point has 50 million opportunities that come out of that. It might not even be 50 million. You could just start with 10 first. And then those 10 opportunities then expand and they keep expanding. So that's just one thing that you could just focus on. But for me, I really just want to get out there and I want to just learn and explore, but also share and showcase how important the mindset is and how it affects us on a day to day basis. And that really reflects from an interpersonal relationship perspective, but most importantly, the most important relationship that you've got, it's the one with yourself.
Definitely. Yeah. And that is the one that's often neglected the most.
100%. Sometimes we
Yeah.
don't realize that, but I think, in practice and in time, as you keep doing it, you will get better at that. And there's always space for you to accept things that you might have not come to realize, but understanding that. And when you can understand yourself in those ways, you might be able to translate that for other people too, and then pick up learnings from others to then update the book that you've got for yourself.
Yeah. That's so touching and so supportive, that's what everyone is looking for. And I think that's what people do forget is how important human interaction is and that connection and being able to lean on someone. So for
It
you to
is.
be able to show up and be there for people, that's such an awesome purpose.
Yes, it definitely is. It gives me goosebumps just even talking and thinking about it because I think, we're such beautiful human beings, but we have our days sometimes ourselves when we either feel like, like life is beating us down or something else might be beating us down, or you might see someone else there, struggling, but we don't always showcase that. But me,
Mhm.
myself as well, one of my biggest learnings right now is learning to be really vulnerable and sharing parts of my life because naturally I'm such a private person. I've always been a really private person. I didn't have really, like, I had social media growing up, maybe Facebook, but I never posted on that. I was never really
Mhm.
tagged in things because I didn't want myself out there in the internet world. But now I've had to shift the mindset in a way that I want to share these experiences because it's also something that I can share with someone else, whether it's giving them an opportunity to see a different perspective, maybe learn from it, but also maybe resonate and think, oh, this really speaks to me. And maybe I can take a page out of her book to apply to my life, but they'll find their own way and what works for them.
Yeah. And well, good on you. That's going from one extreme to the other. You're really putting yourself out there. And that's so cool to see. It takes a lot of courage feeling the fear and just doing it anyway.
It is. But fear is so interesting because I think sometimes we create our own fear because it may stem from insecurities, but also your past experiences. Or if you look at the opposite side of the spectrum too, where people actually fear success because
Yeah.
it means that they're dedicated to something and someone's going to be or someone or something is going to be demanding their attention and energy. So they fear
Hmm.
that too. But I think it's super interesting and life is not linear at all. It's what you make of it.
Yeah. You're definitely right there.
Wow, that was just such a rich conversation. I loved so much of the chat, but the biggest learning I think for me was the inhale versus exhale and how that really translates through your rest and digest. How, you
Hmm.
know, if you inhale for a long time, whether it's 4 seconds and exhaling for 6 seconds, that you
Hmm.
can really release that nervous system and really calm yourself down to bring yourself to the present moment. But
Exactly.
but on the other flip side, the fact that, you know, if you can hold your breath just longer and exhale a bit quicker, that can actually energize you too. That was something that I didn't even realize was a thing.
Exactly. And it's something we can do anywhere. We don't need anything but ourselves to do it. So it's the easiest thing to access and we forget it or we put it off. So it's so important to just take that time for yourself.
Definitely. And there's just something powerful, I think, about hearing someone speak from a place of presence. I know
Mhm.
it'll resonate deeply with a lot of people that are listening because you've shared your journey where you are in your journey. And I know it's not the end for you either. And you're at the start of your journey and just the beginning of your being a yoga teacher. But I think
Mhm.
it's so awesome to be able to share your experience and how you've brought all your learnings and also your tools and ways that you go about approaching it to bring yourself to the present. And I think that's so beautiful. And I hope someone out there that's listening has been able to, you know, take a page out of your book too, where, you know, you want to be able to uplift people. And even though we're not physical at the moment and people out there might just be listening to this or watching this, I'm sure you've touched a lot of people out there.
Hopefully, hopefully it's helped someone.
Definitely, but myself included. Myself included.
Good.
So if you want to connect with Georgia or explore more of her work, you should check out her Instagram. Georgia, what's your Instagram tag?
My Instagram tag is just Georgia Rose Yoga. So it's a bit of a tricky spelling. So it's JorgiaRoze yoga. So all one word. Um, and it's just the start of my journey, like we mentioned, but I'll be posting lots of yoga and wellness tips and just slowing down and interacting, trying to help people and also just willing to listen and hear everybody else's stories.
I love that. Definitely go and give her a follow and check her out because I know I'll be going to check out her page and following in her and her journey because there's just so much we can learn from one another. But thanks so much again for joining us, Georgia, and to everyone listening. Remember, your path doesn't need to be linear. It just needs to be yours. Thanks for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Thank you.